Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope you can see us.
Good
Yes,
afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Yes, so welcome to this session, um, which is we're very pleased to host here at the MSSRF, where we're trying to explore the impact of the Anthropocene on the lives and livelihoods of the tribals, particularly those living in the Western Ghats. That's the focus of this afternoon. And I'm very happy to also welcome Dr. Ashok Velodi, whose idea this was. And we had some very good discussions. And I think he's spoken with many of you about this as well. So he, of course, is a pediatrician like me, a metabolic pediatrician, and he's worked for a long time in the UK at the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a very famous place uh, for for pediatrics, and but has taken a lot of interest in more recently in climate change and its impact on genetics and epigenetics. So that's I think where it this started the interest. But then obviously through his travels, I think he's got interested in some of uh, what many of us have been noticing and working on for a long time, which is the impact on tribal communities of changing climate as well as biodiversity loss and many other things, urbanization, globalization that have happened over the last decades, and the impact that that's having. And and of course, the impact it has on all of us. Tribals may be the worst affected, but certainly the changes in climate and biodiversity are impacting everybody across the world, some more than others. So it is a little bit unequal. So what we are going to try and do today is to maybe to do a deeper dive into some of those issues, particularly from those of you who have lived and worked in the Western Ghats for a long time. And hopefully there are some researchers, academics, some policymakers as well joining this, and it could stimulate further work, further research, but also action uh, to actually improve, the status quo as we find it. Certainly, there's a lot I think that needs to be worked on. So, with that, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Ashok to make some introductory remarks and then to chair this afternoon's webinar. Thank you all very much for joining. I think there'll be enough opportunities for questions and discussion also as we go through the afternoon. Thank you. Over to you, Ashok.
Thank you, Soumya. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on the effects of the Anthropocene on the tribals of the Western Ghats. I'm delighted that there are so many of you here today. For those colleagues who are unable to join, this webinar will be uploaded to YouTube and a link will be available later. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, chairperson of the MSSRF, for her great support and for agreeing for the organization to host this webinar. And of course, to today's panelists who have given up their precious time to attend. The purpose of the webinar is to bring together experts in the field to share their ideas and experience and to raise awareness amongst the wider community. For those of you who don't know me, as Soumya mentioned, I'm a pediatrician, so my background is quite different. I've developed an interest in this area. It has been an exciting but very steep learning curve. The Anthropocene is a term that defines and describes a new era. It is one in which humans have become the dominant force shaping Earth's composition and its processes. It was first proposed as a new geological epoch in 2000, but since then it's been widely adopted as a catch-all description of the impact of human activity on the planet. Now, the more fragile an ecosystem is, the more vulnerable it is to the effects of the Anthropocene. And the Western Ghats of India are one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet. Now, the erosion of an ecosystem has the greatest impact on the tribals who populate it. And this is for two reasons. First of all, tribals have historically been heavily dependent on natural resources. They have lived off the land, relying on deep knowledge of indigenous food baskets. These have diminished steadily, and consumption of Western foods has increased. And the resulting dietary imbalance has resulted in an increase in various health problems, malnutrition, diabetes, to name just a few. The second reason is that these tribals are ill-equipped to deal with the effects of the Anthropocene. Of course, most of them are poor, and yes, finance is a problem. But income is not the only factor. Well-being, commonly measured by the Human Development Index, is also important. In fact, in any given region of India, the HDI of tribals is typically far lower than that of the community as a whole. The Western Ghats are home to a very large number of tribal communities, and certain districts, such as Wayanad in Kerala, have some of the highest concentrations of tribals in India. Yet there are significant intertribal differences, even within the same region. And for example, land ownership is a key player. No other species has caused more devastation to our planet, and no other species has the power to do something about it. So how can we help at the grassroots levels? What are we to do? We cannot reverse the effects of the Anthropocene, but we may be able to help mitigate them by providing tribals not only with resources, but with the requisite capacity building skills. Raising awareness is important. AI has great potential for doing this. But above all, gaining the trust and understanding the worldviews of the tribals are critical to these processes. With me to discuss these issues are Dr. C.K. Vishnudas, Sri K. Vishnudas, Director of the Hume Center for Ecology and Wildlife Biology in Kalpetta, Wayanad; Dr. Tia Suma, Scientist and Head of Food System Research, also from the Hume Center; Mr. Ankur Jain, CEO of Udyog Yantra, which is a deep tech startup based in Delhi; Dr. Ajit, Community Health Practitioner, Association for Health Welfare in the Nilgiris, Ashwin, based in Gudalur; Dr. P.A. Rajeshwari, Associate Professor, Avinashalingam Institute for Home Science and Higher Education for Women in Coimbatore; and as a special observer, Shri N. Prashant, Special Secretary, SCST and Backward Classes Development Departments of the Government of Kerala. The topics that we are hoping to cover are the ecosystems of the Western Ghats, the tribals of the Wayanad region, the food chain of the Western Ghat tribals, the role of AI in the assessment of their food baskets, how to effect change at the grassroots. So without any further ado, let's begin. Can I start by asking Vishnu to tell us a few words about the ecosystems of the Western Ghats? Vishnu.
Yeah, good afternoon. I think I'm audible to everyone. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the briefly about the ecosystems of Western Ghats, and I would like to share my screen first. Can you see my screen? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir,
Hello?
it is visible. Yes, sir, it
Okay,
is
okay.
visible.
Yeah. So, see, Western Ghats, we have been talking about Western Ghats a lot. Like, we all know that there was a committee for protecting Western Ghats, the Western Ghat Ecology Expert Committee on Ecology, and led by Professor Gadgil. and has been in discussion for a longer period of time. And we are all located and dependent either in one way or other way to the these majestic mountains, which are still just all like 150 million years. So, looking at the different ecosystems, I would like to classify into some three, four major categories. One is the mountain ecosystems of the Western Ghats, basically the crust of the Western Ghat part from the right from the Gujarat to the Kanyakumari. So, and if you're looking at the mountains as a separate zone in the Western Ghat, it has its own peculiarities as well as it has its own problems. When you talk about the impact of the Anthropocene on these mountain tops and how communities are living, the different communities who are depending on the mountain ecosystems are, and the problems are quite different across the mountains. And you can also see a very high gradient of rainfall and temperature across the Western Ghats, right from the southern tip of India, from where you start, and as we go to the northern side, up to the Maharashtra and Gujarat. So the precipitation across the mountain makes a big difference and create a different kind of niche, and different communities over the periods have been adapted to different kind of different smaller ecosystems in the larger Western Ghats. And if you look at the one of the key mountain ecosystems, so for example, where people are also sharing a major part, like Nilgiris and Nilgiris, Wayanad, Koli, and the Munnar and the Palni Hills landscape, including the Kodaikanal. So we could also see a set of the local communities as well as an influx of people from the plains across the period of time. And also in recent time, there is a large scale of tourist tourism infrastructure as well as inflow of tourists into these mountain tops. So, in the context of climate change, everybody would like to travel into the cooler part of the world, and especially in recent times, there is a large scale, movement of people from the plains to the cooler mountain tops. So, I would say that the mountain ecosystems are in high pressure in recent times, either for the tourism expeditions or for the agriculture, and also a part of the development that we have seen across the Western Ghats. So climate change also brings up there's a big change in the temperature. For example, we are based in Wayanad, and if you look at the temperature regime of Wayanad with the last 30 years, there is already an increase of 1.5 degrees in the region. So while we talk about the global agreement is about to reduce the or the limit the increase by 1.5 degree by 2050. So areas such as Wayanad and other areas like Kodaikanal or Ooty or Nilgiris, many parts of the Western Ghats are already facing a significant increase in temperature. So it has its own impact on the agroecosystems, life and livelihood of the communities. For example, in 2018, after 2018, we have been witnessing a series of landslides in the whole of Western Ghats, especially in the southern Western Ghats, starting from Kodagu, Wayanad, Nilgiris, and Palni Hills. Everywhere, we have experienced large-scale landslides and large-scale erosion. So, on one side, there is a heavy erosion of soil, fertile soil from the mountain tops to the valleys. At the same time, large areas are becoming unfit for agriculture and related activities. So, that has in its own impact on the other sectors as well. So, as a whole, the mountain ecosystems in the Western Ghats, I would say, has a high priority, and we should also give, priority to the well-being of the people living in these mountain tops. For example, a lot of tribal communities in Nilgiris and Wayanad are depending on these mountain ecosystems and the resources from the mountains. So I think that is one particular point I would like to make. And second is about the grassland system. So the Shola grasslands are the primary ecosystems of the Western Ghats. At the same time, you can see the grasslands are unique in terms of its functions and as a large supplier of freshwater resources to the valleys and the rivers that originates from the Western Ghats. So the grasslands plays a significant role. At the same time, there is the most important threat to the landscape, the grassland systems of Western Ghats, is the conversion of the grasslands into the wooded forest or the woodlands. So there was a lot of plantations raised in the late 70s and 1960s and 70s across the foothills of Western Ghats. And over a period of time, many of these plantations like eucalyptus, wattles, have inverted into the mountain systems and converted these grasslands into woodlands and totally altering the ecosystem functions and the ecosystem services from the grasslands. So these grasslands provide the perennial water source throughout the whole of South India gets water from this most of these grasslands. So the about one of our studies shows that about 68 percentage of grasslands has been converted into the woodlands. So there was also a notion in the past that these grasslands are wastelands because the Indian forest classification itself says that that the grasslands of India and are not really looked into an ecosystem as such. Only some recent studies have established that these are primary grasslands, there are unique species into that, and we need to protect those things. And other three major categories are the agro ecosystems. So the prime landscape, which is comprised of mountains, which having grasslands and shola forests, 1,400 meters and above. And if you come to below 1,400 meters up to 1,000 meters, you have evergreen forest ecosystems. So a part of the forest ecosystems has been protected for many reasons, either as a protected area or a forest or wildlife sanctuaries. A large part of these forest ecosystems were exploited at the time of British itself and converted into plantations. So, for example, in Wayanad, the about 30 to 40% area has been converted into agriculture plantations over a period of time, especially for coffee and other crops. And valleys within the ecosystems are being utilized as the rice fields and for many other crops. So we should also see these two areas, the prime forest ecosystems of the Western Ghats of the mid elevation as a unique ecosystem that provide again on the water resources. When we talk from the human point of view, how these ecosystems are beneficial to human beings. From the ecosystems and biodiversity point of view, when we look at these ecosystems, we could say that these are very, very minimal in terms of area that has been conserved over a period of time. And the third category would be to look at the agro ecosystems. And I would like to classify this into the woodland based agro ecosystems where people are cultivating coffee, pepper, or the rubber and many other crops. So this right from the whole of Western Ghats, you can see these kind of agro ecosystems, and these agro ecosystems and the management of agro ecosystems plays a major role in maintaining the microclimate of the region. For example, if you take Wayanad or Coorg, so the tree cover in the coffee agro ecosystem plays a major role in maintaining the microclimate of the region, and in terms very much important for the growth of the coffee plants and coffee, cardamom, pepper. So the tree cover is very, very important in these agro ecosystems. So at the same time, there are a lot of pressure in recent times based on the economic returns from many of these agro ecological crops. For example, the coffee price in the market price are always driven by the extent of how much coffee is being cultivated, or the market price of cardamom is driving the extent of cultivation. So there is always a tendency to go behind the market prices and to bring in changes in the pattern in which the crops are cultivated. So the market economy plays a major role in influencing the the agroecological systems of the Western Ghats. And if you go to the northern Western Ghats, you will have the community
I'm
forests.
sorry, Vishnu. Sorry,
Sorry.
I have to. Can I just interrupt in the
Yeah,
interest of
please,
time?
please.
If
Yeah,
you could just um, state just two or three
yeah,
ways, just state them in which the tribals have been affected,
yeah,
how the ecosystem has been affected. If you had to summarize it,
yeah,
what
yeah.
would you say were the two or three main areas? because we need to move on. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that's what I am coming to. The mountain system, the people living on the mountain systems are, for example, in Nilgiris and Wayanad and those areas, we need to have a policy to maintain the health of the forest ecosystem. For example, there are a lot of invasives in the forest ecosystem in recent times that actually have a binding on the livelihood they are depending on. For example, the Katunayaka communities or the Badagas of the Nilgiris or Todas of the Nilgiris. So these are all communities who are slightly depending on the forest ecosystem. So but the invasives have transformed the quality, transformed the forest ecosystem as a nutshell. They change a lot, and their dependency on forest has come down a lot. In addition, there are also human-animal conflict issues in recent times, so that also need to be addressed for maintaining the agriculture and the agriculture in forest boundaries in the whole of Western Ghats. And if you go to the mosaic, the savanna grassland mosaic ecosystem, as an example in the Bandipur, Malmalai, and the Palakkad and those areas. So here again, the people's dependence on the forest ecosystems are to some extent very high, especially for water resources and for seasonal collection of wild edibles and those kind of things. So the access to the ecosystems are also very important. So I would say the protection of the natural ecosystem from the invasives is a very, very important strategy. Should be in the strategy in the coming years to ensure the livelihood of the local people who are depending either in terms of their non-forest, non-timber forest produce collection or the availability of water from the forest areas. So for all these reasons, these ecosystems and protection and restoration of some of these ecosystems are very important, especially the restoration of grasslands are very much important in the whole of Western Ghats in
Okay,
the coming
thank
years.
you, Vishnu. I think we should move on.
Yes, thank you.
Can we move on to, there'll be time for questions perhaps in the open session after in the open session after the various panelists have spoken. Can we move on to the next speaker, Dr. Suma? Is Dr. Suma?
I just wanted to add that if you have slides, please check whether they're advancing because Dr. Vishnu, we only saw your first slide. And I don't know if you had only one slide or whether you were advancing them, but they were not advancing on our screen.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Got it.
So I've already introduced Dr. Suma. She's going to talk about some of the tribals of the Wayanad region of Kerala.
Good afternoon to all, and I'm so happy to be with all of you at this occasion. So let me share my screen first. Mm. Where's Hope you can see my screen.
Can you go on slide? It's gone. We saw
Okay,
it, but
sorry.
just go on full screen mode. It'll be easier.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
It's visible, but it's not on the whole screen. Can you put it on slideshow mode?
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Hope it is.
Yeah, now it's fine. Now
Yeah.
it's fine.
Okay. So without taking much time, let me start. The tribal life in Anthropocene, a case study from Western Ghats is the topic which I am presenting today. And there also I will be little more bit focusing on the food systems of the tribal communities who are living in the Wayanad region of Western Ghats. As we all know, Anthropocene is an era which we are explaining after the industrial revolution period. The main aspect of this era is the usage of fossil fuel and mass production of all the kinds, mass production of and larger distributive networks, and also larger economy. So maybe that is why we are calling it in other way Capitocene also. In many times people have difference of opinion whether we have to call it as Anthropocene or Capitocene, because all human beings are not responsible for the effects which we are facing right now. When we are discussing about tribals, again, I think this is an important aspect which we have to think of, whether it is Capitocene or Anthropocene. So, and again, coming back to the food production systems in the Anthropocene, especially when we are talking about climate change and other things, the larger food production systems and also the distribution channels of that food production system is a factor which is contributing to the fossil fuel emission and the climate change impacts. Then when we are coming back to the tribal systems, most of the tribal populations, the characteristics of tribal population is small economy and independent and small economy. They are some of them are subsistence farming economy, some of them are forest dependent economy, and self-sufficiency is one of the characteristics of these economies. And the modern values like individual property, when modern values of individual property and individual land rights and commodification of land and other things are can be attributed to the Anthropocene. When coming to the tribal value system, mostly they continue with common property resources, and they also believe in sharing these common property resources among them, including the food items in and around them. So most of the tribal communities are collecting, still practicing the foraging aspect of food. And many of the tribal communities, tribal economies are not connected to the larger economy, the capital-driven economy. And we know as part of development, it is now being connected to the development initiatives are trying to connect them with the larger economy, but originally they were not part of the, we can see they still have a trait of resistance to go away, to be away from the big economy. So that is why this is important. Even though we are talking about the crisis that facing by tribal communities, there is also an element of resistance which we have to learn from tribal communities. And when again coming back to the Western Ghats, its biodiversity and the cultural diversity and the diversity in food systems is important to understand and to go into the detail to learn more what is happening with these diverse food systems in this as part of in this region. In this presentation, I will bring 3 groups of tribal communities. One is Paniya and Adia. Paniya and Adia are living in Wayanad. They are the laborer communities. They were part of, once upon a time, they were lived as slaves in this agrarian landscape. So their food and other things is connected with the agrarian landscape, and the commonly shared plant and animal diversity in the agrarian landscape was the base of their food basket. And Katanaika and Urali Kuruma, they are 2 forest-dependent communities. Still, they are living inside the forest. As many of those families have the forest right under Forest Right Act, but their food is highly depending on the plants and animals available in the forest. And these communities are also called as hunters and gatherers, but in the official documents, even though their economy is not hunters, is not based on hunting and gathering activities anymore. And another 2 communities are Mulukurma and Kuricha. They are the subsistence farming community, those who have land and they are still continuing with agriculture, but they are facing few challenges. And even though the Mulukurma and Kuricha are agrarian communities, they have relation with the forest ecosystem and relation with the biodiversity in the forest, and also relation with the associated diversity in the agroecosystems. And I also would like to compare this community experience with the migrant farming community. That is also important to understand the gap. So let me go to the first community, Pania. Along with Pania, I will also explain Adia. Both the characteristics of both these communities are same. As I explained, Pania were the laborer communities who were once upon a time, they were also sold along with the land by landlords to other landlords. And the food basket of these communities is highly rich with the highly dependent on the leafy greens available in the paddy fields and the streams flowing through the paddy fields, because these people were laborers in the paddy fields. And their food basket is also rich with the small animals like crabs and shell kind of organisms in the streams. And they also eat lots of fish, smaller fish in the small streams in Wayanad. So what happened to this community in the Anthropocene is that when the land has become a property and agriculture also has become a economic activity, a highly economic activity in the neoliberal world, paddy cultivation itself has become very uneconomic for the farmers of Wayanad. And also it led to conversion of paddy fields into banana farms and also to the other crops, which is not promoting those kind of diversity in the paddy fields. And also the usage of fertilizers, extensive usage of fertilizers and chemical pesticides in the paddy fields for other crops also influence the availability of these kind of small organisms in those wetlands. So the food basket of this community has reduced a lot, and they also eat. And another factor is the labor and agrarian relationship. Before, there was a feeling among the community that once a laborer came to a landlord's place to do some labor, when he or she is going back to his family at the evening, it was a common practice that they can collect the leaves, they can collect the vegetables around there and go to their home. But now, because the land fragmentation is very high, the intensity of agriculture is very, crop intensity is very high in the agrarian landscapes. So these kind of sharing of associated diversity is also reduced. And this kind of understanding among the communities that this can be shared is also reduced. So these people are now, this act of collecting these things is many times considered as a theft. So they are often accused as thieves in these landscapes. So their food basket is shrinking like anything. Now they are living near the urban centers and also near the agrarian fields, but not in a very reduced access. So Pania is a community which is living in Wayanad. Almost 40% of the total tribal population is consisting of Pania, but their health status is very, very, very low. The mother and child health and the maternity issues and the child mortality rate, everything is very high among this community. And the nutrition status is also very, very low in Pania community. So somewhat, this is a table, but I'm not sharing. This is a data related with the shrinking food basket items. So maybe I can share it to the publication, but I'm not going to read it out because of the time concern. And Adia is also going through the same situation. Now I'm coming to the Katunaika case. Katunaika and Viralikurma were the two communities living inside the forest, and their food basket was mostly like they used to eat a lot of left out meats by carnivores. For example, when if a tiger is hunted a deer, it used to drink the blood and eat a little, and also keep the dead animal for few days to rot the meat a little. But at that time, Katnaika used to collect a piece of meat from those animals and eat. So they were you actually sharing the meat with the carnivores. And they used to eat lots of smaller animals, catching them through tracks and other things. And they also used to eat lots of eggs, bird eggs, wild birds eggs, and they also used to catch fish from the forest streams. After and the tubers and Katanaika are rich in knowledge of wild tubers, and they also used to manage wildfire for the in favor of more productivity for the wild tubers. But introduction of conservation laws, both forest conservation and also wildlife conservation, actually restricted them to collect all these things. Actually, our conservation laws erase the protein part of Katanaika food basket, and they left out with the leafy greens and other things. And recently, as Mr. Vishnudas was saying, in recent years, because of the climate change and because of the habitat change and other things, the forest ecosystem is also changing a lot. They are not able to move especially the women were collecting the food items from the forest. The forest is becoming an unsafe place for these people because of the growth of invasive species, and also because of the changing behavior of wild animals and other things. So the leaf part, the vegetable part of Katanaika is also under threat. So this is the case of Katanaika, and because of religious matters, usually Katanaika, Paniya and these people, they are hesitant to eat meat from the market. But nowadays, and they don't eat meat of the animals or birds which they grow in their own homestead. But recently, those practices are changing. They have started eating chicken. But chicken is the only replacement, protein replacement to their food basket. And milk is not, still not part of their a favorite item for them. And so again, but considering with Paniya, Katanaika have more access to the leafy green still, as they are living inside the protected area, and leaves are available there. This is
Excuse
also
me,
the data.
Suma, can I
Yeah.
interrupt, please? Can
Yeah.
I'm just trying to move on. So
Yeah.
can I just summarize? So we're looking at different tribes that have different modes of existence. For example, in your work, you have shown that the Kurchias have a matrilineal system, and they have up to 100 members of a family in a mittam, and they can practice biodiversity and crop rotation and so on.
Yes.
Their land ownership is much better than that of the Paniyas. There was a
Yes.
paper published in 2020 by the Wellcome Trust and I think one or two other people, which compared the Paniyas and the Kurchias and showed that the Paniyas did much worse than the Kurchias because of very important factors such as much less land ownership,
Yes.
um, and probably other factors that we don't know about. They also identified maternal violence against the mothers as an important factor. So have you, along with that, we have urbanization. So Western diets have crept in. Have you noticed any difference in
Yes.
the lifestyles and the things like obesity, for example? Are they different in different tribes?
Yeah, yes, very different, because the Kurichya, when coming to the Kurichya, the health indices are very high, because in my study itself, which I found is Kurichya health status is higher than the mainstream community of Kerala, because the reason is that they are still having they still have land in their hand, and they are living in joint families. Even though they have started practicing living in nuclear families, their land management is still continuing as joint, and their principal crop is still rice. They are cultivating multiple varieties of rice, and after rice season, Kurichya women used to cultivate lots of vegetables in their farms. So the food basket is still diverse. So for me, the what you call the access to biodiversity and opportunity to cultivate and opportunity to eat diversity is more for Kurichya. And the question for obesity, actually, I didn't observe much cases of obesity in both the communities. Even among Paniya, the problem which we are observing is underweight. Even height is less among people,
Okay.
and the substance abuse is also very high. That is why the men lifespan is also reducing a lot.
The reason
So
I ask, I'm sorry to interrupt. The reason I
yeah.
ask about obesity is that there is very good published evidence across the world in different tribes that undernutrition in early childhood results in obesity later on. And intervention in early childhood may be very important in preventing later obesity. So I think if we look for it, we will probably find it. The best
Yeah,
studies
but
have.
so can I, after I remember the day we discussed these things in Wayanad, after that I was trying to collect some data from the Anganwadis and also some observations in the villages where we are working. But in Wayanad, I could not find that much of data. I don't know. We have to do a proper research, then only we can tell it.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much, Suma. Can
Yeah.
we move on to our next speaker, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Um, our next speaker is Mr. Ankur Jain, CEO of Udyog Yantra, and it's a deep tech startup based in Delhi, and he's going to tell us about the role of artificial intelligence in this area and what he's found.
Sure. Thank you, Doctor, and good afternoon, Dr. Soumya and the entire team. Very quickly, I'll share my screen, and do let me know once you're able to see the screen. Is the screen visible with the slide there?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Yeah, so I think I'm not doing the kind of tribal work what what we have heard till now, but what I'm building is a tool, how technology can really scale up the work all your the distinguished people in this group are doing, and make each one of the human who is looking after tribal nutrition or tribal food basket more scalable. So that's the role of technology. I'll start with a small video which is about how the technology that we are developing.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Am I not audible? Am I not audible? Is it audible?
You're audible now, yes.
Okay. Was I not able to? Was my audio not there throughout the conversation till now, or it just vanished at the last?
You're okay. Please carry on.
Okay. Is my video visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this is the implementation of such technology in one of the tribal areas in Maharashtra, Gadchiroli, where these tribal schools are deep inside Naxal areas, and the implementing organizations, people who fund this, it's a state government, they are not able to effectively monitor in the absence of technology. So the AI platform that you see basically inspects the food plate for every child in the school. There is almost enough money being pumped by the state government onto the right nutrition programs for the school children. But mostly like 10-20% of the children get eggs against the sanctioned eggs. So basically, it's a supply chain issue. And we'll not go into the reasons of why the eggs don't reach the children. But fundamentally, that's where role of AI technology in monitoring the implementation of public sponsored or privately sponsored nutrition supplement programs for school children. As you said, right? Children are undernutrition at a young age can lead to obesity and other issues at a senior age. So that's where this technology briefly captures the nutrition intake of the child and correlates it to the child identity and the child growth parameters, the weight and the height, which is BMI. So basically, there are multiple objectives. One is to ensure that the right nutrition as per the menu is reaching to the right amount of intended recipients. And it's not just only top 10%, 20% of the target intended recipients receive the same, but also it creates a correlation between over a period, how nutrition is impacting the growth of the child. So closer videos of what you saw till now, I think as children take their meals, they report it. So it's an internet connected device. The device inspects what the child has taken, captures the nutrition and the child information and puts it to the central government dashboard. So that's where the whole nutrition monitoring becomes centralized by AI rather than a supervisor going and checking what the child is eating. This is not for every home, but it's designed for schools where there is captive large population where nutrition monitoring can be implemented. Okay. So these report outs are in the form of menu compliance, planned nutrition versus served nutrition. Okay. And that's where this creates the monitoring of the nutrition along with BMI statistics across genders, across classes, and thinness, overweight, normal, overweight. Again, these are all without human intervention, discrete digital data coming from schools in tribal areas. Okay, then you have quality assessment of nutrition that is being offered. And again, is the sambar being offered without vegetables? It drastically brings down the vitamin components of the meal that has been planned. It's only now protein and carbohydrates. So similarly, these are illustrations of how AI can be used to track nutrition for this particular conversation, tribal areas, but fundamentally wherever the economic scenario of that particular belt or geography doesn't permit nutrition to be effectively distributed, and that's where government or NGOs come in place to fund that nutrition or supplement that nutrition. And then how do you ensure that monitoring of those supply chains are managed by AI? So overall objectives include menu compliance, nutrition tracking, BMI tracking, nutrition report cards, monitoring of quality, and pilferage. So that's where I would like to end. And any questions, Dr. Ashok or Dr. Soumya would like to take?
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I think we need to move on, but I have just two questions that perhaps you can address later. One is, are you looking at micronutrients in addition to macronutrients? Because it's been shown that micronutrients are very important, and the incidence, for example, of iron deficiency anemia in certain tribal populations is extremely high in Kerala, despite measures that have been instituted. And the second is, in addition to undernutrition and stunting, are you also looking at wasting? Because there is what's called the CIAF, the Composite Index of Anthropometric Failure, which is now widely used to measure as an index of malnutrition. So I'll just pose those two questions, and perhaps you can answer them in the open discussion.
Sure.
Let's move on to the next speaker, please. It's Dr. Rajeshwari. And Dr. Rajeshwari.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we have her online, please? Dr. Rajeshwari is going to talk about the food chains of the tribals of the Western Ghats.
Sir, is my slide visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir. So pleasant evening to all. Thank you, Dr. Ashok sir and Dr. Soumya ma'am, for this wonderful opportunity. I'm here to present a few points about the food chain of Western Ghat tribals. As ma'am has already spoken about the tribes of Kerala, let me start with the tribes of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu is a home to several tribal communities residing in the Western Ghats region, particularly in areas such as Erkat, Kodaikanal, and Kolli Hills. Their food habits, culinary practices, and medicinal knowledge are deeply intertwined with the biodiversity of Western Ghats, with a strong emphasis on the traditional agricultural practices and food consumption. So in Western Ghats, the indigenous communities within the Paramiculam Wildlife Sanctuary are documented to utilize an impressive 83 plant species for food. This diverse range of plant species represents rich biological diversity of the Western Ghats. So moving on to the various food products available in the Western Ghats, the traditional main crops cultivated at Western Ghats include ragi and other few cereals like kodo millet, sorghum, foxtail millet, and proso millet, which are valued for its macronutrient composition and few rich micronutrient compositions, and offering a diverse array of grains that enrich the dietary and nutritional diversity of the tribe residing in Western Ghats. The pulses such as heart's gram, St. Thomas bean, velvet bean, and snownet bean are the most commonly consumed beans available in the Western Ghats. Heart's gram is a significant component of the tribal diet in the Western Ghats due to its high protein and mineral content. It is commonly consumed as a raw seed, providing essential nutrients and contributing to the overall dietary protein intake of the tribe. St. Thomas bean, this legume is valued for its nutritional benefits and is incorporated into the diet of the Western Ghat tribes. Its consumption likely contributes to the dietary diversity and protein intake among the various communities. So in case of milk and milk products, the inclusion of milk, curds, and ghee derived from cows, buffaloes, and goats are essential elements of the diet among the tribes of the Western Ghat regions, which signifies the reliance on dairy as a significant source of nutrition. Moving on to the vegetables, the consumption of various wild vegetables by the tribes in the Western Ghats region sourced from various plants and others represent the dietary diversity and nutritional intake of these tribal communities. Wild vegetables such as roots, tubers, young leaves, buds, and inflorescence from the plants like blue wish and the Indian head root provide vital nutrients such as vitamin A, C, and K, as well as minerals like iron, potassium, and calcium. Their consumption supports a balanced diet and enhances the intake of essential dietary components necessary for the overall health and vitality. Wild berries, for instance, are known for their high antioxidant content, which is beneficial against the oxidative stress and inflammation. Jackfruit is a good source of vitamin C while also offering dietary fiber and various essential minerals. Mangoes are seasonal fruits and are rich in vitamin A and C as well as potassium and dietary fiber. which contributes to the overall immune function and digestive health. Banana is widely available in the tribal area and it offers a good source of potassium as well as the essential mineral for maintaining poor heart function, proper heart function and blood pressure. Guavas are also known for their high vitamin C content and dietary fiber, promoting digestive health and overall well-being. Apart from all these above-mentioned fruits, tamarind, in addition to being a good source of vitamins and minerals, offers a unique sweet, sour flavor to the dishes, introducing a distinct culinary element of the tribe's cuisine. So another important point to be concentrated when we speak about the food chain of Western Ghats is nothing but the spices and condiments. The rich tradition of incorporating diverse spices and condiments into their diet is a significant aspect of the culinary practices of tribes in the Western Ghats region, which offers a great medicinal value in India as well as in abroad. The nutritional importance of spices and condiments lies in their multifaceted contributions to the overall health, flavor, and diversity of the tribe diet. Spices such as turmeric, cumin, coriander, black pepper, and ginger, often incorporated into the culinary practices of these tribes, offer not only unique flavor but also a range of potential health benefits. For example, turmeric contains curcumin, a potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory component. Similarly, cumin is a good source of iron and may aid in digestion. Black pepper, known for its peppermint content, may enhance the bioavailability of all the nutrients. Additionally, condiments such as tamarind, used for its tangy flavor, is rich in vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber. Its incorporation into the diet adds potent antioxidants and aids in digestion. These spices and condiments not only enhance the sensory appeal of the diet, but also enhances the overall palatability. So here I can just brush up through the various food products what the Avinashalingam University over these past 50 years have developed and tried various intervention programs in the community. We have just conducted a supplementation study on spirulina in the tribal community of Nilgiris, and the outcome showed that it has improved the nutritional status of children and improved the nutrition deficiency status also. And we have also conducted another study on the supplementation of spirulina among the anemic women of Manna and Urli tribes of Idukki district, Kerala, which demonstrated a significant increase in the hemoglobin level among the anemic women from the tribal community. And this slide projects about the formulation of the spirulina incorporated food supplement, which demonstrated a statistically significant increase in the hemoglobin level and vitamin A level among the tribal children in the Nilgiris district. This is all about the funding opportunity provided to us 10 years before by the Swaminathan Research Center, which played a pivotal role in providing the financial support for the research and the development activities, which focused on the utilization of small millets in creating recipes, particularly for the tribal population in the Kolli Hills region. This funding support has facilitated the exploration, experimentation, and standardization of the recipes that incorporate small millets such as ragi, samai, thinai, and varagu. Scientific studies highlight millets as a valuable source of antioxidants, and the primary objective of this study was to develop and standardize snacks, healthy foods, old age foods, and weaning foods using the millets, namely ragi, samai, thinai, and varagu, and work out their cost, economics, and train the self-help group women for the real transformation of technology into the community. And we developed various products, and we have categorized that as snack, healthy food, and old age food, and weaning food based on the income group such as low income, middle income, and high income group. And we have just worked out on the cost economics. For example, ragi tattai muruku, the quantity was 30 pieces, and the cost was worked out for 12 rupees, which is seems to be very cost effective and this can be tried out in various other population groups also. And apart from development of the products, we also conducted training programs to the 50 self-help group women from Kolli Hills, and hands-on training was given right from the procurement of the sample till the process of packaging, and those women also benefited from the conduct of the training program what we did in our institute. So to add up with the work, what we do in the community, we conduct intervention programs in different communities. And to start with the intervention program, we go for the ethical clearance. In our institute, we have a institutional ethical committee. The ethical framework ensures that the intervention prioritize the participant welfare, informed consent, and confidentiality. The meticulous selection of the subsample involves scientific rigor, considering diverse demographic factors to enhance the program's relevance and effectiveness. And we have conducted we have conducted few supplementation as well as health and nutrition education programs to the people in the tribal community in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, as well as in few states of Northeast India. So the slide emphasizes on the various food products which we have developed, which arise on the communicable disease specific food products, non-communicable disease specific food products, and the food products based on the food forms and the target groups. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. And I've got a couple of questions, but we can perhaps deal with that in the open session. Let's move on to our last speaker, Dr. Ajit, who is going to be talking about how can we effect change at the grassroots level.
Thank you, Dr. Velodi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So just wanted to share my screen. I think I have the permission. Okay. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah. So many of the things I wanted to talk about, first of all, just to give you an introduction about the kind of work we do here. I am Dr. Ajit. I am a public health professional. I've been working in Gullur since the last 2 years. I work in an organization which came from a people's movement. It started off as a land rights movement in the 80s, evolved into various developmental aspects, and then now each of these developmental aspects is depicted as an organization in itself, which all kind of converge under the Adivasi Munnetra Sangam, an Adivasi collective working in 320 villages in 2 taluks of Nilgiris, which is Gudlur and Pandalur. So we have close to 22,000 Adivasi members in this area, which roughly constitutes around 10% of the total population. And that's one thing which is which was very striking when Dr. Suma and Mr. Vishnudas, when they were talking about the experiences they had in Wayanad, because these are forested communities and communities which live in close proximity to the forest, who once were the sole owners of the place that they inhabit in, and now kind of relegated to being the minority in the same area. Now, in a lot of ways, the evolution of the system that I work in comes from the predominant need of having one's own land. And we also saw how, land ownership kind of affects or kind of catalyzes a lot of positive changes in the purchasing power, the agency, and the choices behind various forms of various developmental questions. So just to give a context about this, the communities that live here, we have predominantly 4 tribal communities which are part of the collective. We have 5 tribal communities which share the landscape: Paniya, Katanaikan, Vetukurumba, Mulkurumba, and Irula. Irula is a minority which is more towards the Masnagudi side. Paniyas are the majority. They have close to 58% of the total population of the tribal communities here. Mulukurumbas are also people who share their borders with Wayanad. A lot of them are, traditionally, into agroeconomy, into irrigated farming like rice cultivation. They have a little bit of land ownership as compared to the other tribes. Vettu Kurumbas in Kerala are known as Urali Kurumbas, and in Karnataka they are known as Kadu Kurumbas, I think. So all of them, all of these communities have a relation in terms of the language, the culture, the identity that they have, and they are primarily living in the mountains. They have been the they have been the carers for elephants primarily in the area, and many of the mahouts, many of the employees in the elephant camp in Tepakad and all are from the Betakurumba community. And Kartanaikans, like what other speakers have mentioned, have been predominantly dependent on forests in terms of their livelihood and inhabitation. Now, a lot of Kartanaikans are actually displaced from inside the forest to the fringes of the forest, where they have given a small piece of land and a house constructed by the government. Now, in a lot of ways, demographic change or influx of people from other areas to Nilgiris have kind of changed the way Adivasis experience various developmental aspects, especially the pull forces or push forces that are there from big private estates, the Forest Rights Act. There are various forms of land usage that has affected, tribals from kind of getting some livelihood or some housing related needs from the land that they live in. Then there is a huge influx of repatriated Sri Lankan refugees into this part, into these two taluks, where they constitute a majority of estate workers, which kind of also shifted the voting, rights and entitlements and the election related conversations in this area. Now, in terms of the social realities, many of these things are already talked by various speakers. Just to mention a few things that were missed out, we have a predominant problem of animal-human conflict. In fact, in the last 3 months, we had 3 victims to leopard attacks who succumbed to their wounds. We have a huge housing issue because the kind of, the culturally appropriate houses that Adivasi community members in these areas require, which is also suitable for the topography and the weather, are not what they get from these government schemes. And it's mostly a generic colonized form of a housing that they get, which is kind of a clear departure from the kind of living conditions that they were exposed to. In terms of wash challenges, there is a lot of water and sanitation hygiene challenges, especially because much of the source of water has now become piped water from the government schemes. In terms of political representation, because these are communities which are now only a minority, the purchasing power, the agency that they used to have, they are not able to exercise that right now. Many of the Gram Sabhas don't see much of an attendance from the tribal communities. And we often hear things like, they are from so-and-so tribal community. They don't want many of the schemes that are given by the government. They are not interested in taking part in a lot of decision-making processes and all of that. And this also has something to do with the identity-related evolution that tribal community members are going through. In terms of forest rights, enough had been said. I want to go back and duplicate that. In terms of healthcare, like what Dr. Suma said, a lot of these communities are disenfranchised in terms of the access to healthcare. Even though we have all the necessary government machinery in place in terms of ASHAs or Anganwadi workers for a specific number of people, these ASHAs and Anganwadi workers are not able to tide over the micro geographical challenges like the tough terrain or the adverse weather conditions, or even completely invisibilize the existence of many of the tribal villages in this area. And in terms of the broader challenges that we try to address, we have identified that in the last 20 years, in a lot of ways, the rapid urbanization that had happened in our context has further restricted the access to sustainable livelihood options. And many of the people have started migrating to various other places like Kodagu or Tirupur in the textile industry, or to Kerala in the construction industry for better paying livelihood. In a way where there was much more sustainable forms of livelihoods earlier, where because subsistence was given importance, now it has actually shifted to a more cash dependent economy. And because cash comes in, there is no merit to actually go and forage various non-timber forest produce for their own consumption. So in a lot of ways, the community practices of gathering various diverse dietary sources has become more and more rare these days. This also has something to do with the way the younger generation in the tribal community have dissociated from a lot of their beliefs, primarily because of the aspirational issues that they are having, because the world around them is ever expanding. A lot of amenities are coming in other non-tribal households around them, and somehow they are not able to see the same change happening in the shrinking hamlet that they are living in. And in a lot of ways, this level of colonization has affected and influenced the development of various diseases, chronic diseases like mental illnesses. We see a high burden of suicides in our communities. Since 2005, almost 15 to 18 suicides happen on an annual basis. In terms of various government schemes that are available for indigenous communities, especially considering the most recent schemes like Janman and all, a lot of schemes are extremely good and efficient in the terms of in the kind of entitlements that had been listed in them. But when it comes to the ground level execution, a lot of tribal households get missed. And because of that, be that a health insurance scheme or a entitlement scheme or even something like a pension scheme, there are a lot of dropouts. And because this back and forth doesn't happen, and in a camp model, a lot of people are, missed out. After the camp gets over, a lot of people don't really get to be part of these government schemes. And because many of these tribal communities have a very different way of looking at life, very different way of looking at death per se, it is a big challenge for us to influence the health-seeking behavior that here have. And all of these issues have a big overarching problem, which is the alcohol and substance abuse. Here the government systems are the sole proprietor for selling alcohol, and that becomes a bigger issue in terms of like utilization and access to alcohol. We had seen a major dip in terms of alcohol utilization in the tribal communities during the pandemic, during the lockdowns. But as soon as the lockdown lifted, communities have actually gone back to alcohol, and there are various informal mechanisms by which there will be an auto rickshaw which picks up local alcohol from the government Tasmac shop and goes to the villages and distributes that in the villages and all of that. So in a lot of ways, alcohol kind of have these cross-cutting effects on various these factors, which make the health a little more dubious, a little more precarious. We also see, because this distinct lack of aspiration has translated into people dropping out of decision-making roles, like in local leaderships and in local action. Earlier the organization used to pride itself in getting village leaders to come together and decide for themselves. But now that level of involvement is not there. That is also a bigger issue that we are tackling. Now, I have a lot of slides about how we can effect change from a grassroots level. But I think this would be relevant if we are talking about it from a discussion point of view, rather than me talking about it. But the primary, the one very important principle that I want to put light onto is there is no bigger agency than the government. No NGO can replicate the scale and the sustainability of a government agency. So in a lot of ways, when the government becomes more perceptive, when the government also takes in a lot more input from these communities with the bottoms up kind of an approach, a lot of issues get solved. And we have also seen, very inspiring examples of this in terms of the execution of the Ayushman Bharat scheme in these parts, because it is also part of the Janman scheme. In a lot of ways, many of these camps were organized in conjunction with the wishes of the community, and a lot of people also kind of participated in these camps, which happened in the last 1 month. And in a lot of ways, these small initiatives also make us emphasize on the role of government more in such an evolving situation. Then there is no better audit than social. When you have people from the community taking up the responsibility of auditing or appraising a government system or a NGO based service delivery system, the quality increases manifold. It also makes people more than just a respondent or a beneficiary. They become active participants in the chain. And that also makes us feel much more at ease, because programs and planning and implementation is all done by the people for themselves. So in a lot of ways, when we make these participatory methods a routine practice, a lot of democratic aspects of program implementation comes into fruition. then definitely a lot of things about Adivasi living is changing in terms of the community spaces, in terms of the housing experiences, in terms of the attitudinal and the Adivasi identity in itself is changing. And this is inevitable. All these communities are also getting influenced by the mainstream communities. So to provide a space for developing their own choice, to choose what is relevant for them and what is not relevant for them, and giving the choice to the people actually makes a lot of difference. In our context, we have been able to inculcate through, we have a tribal school here, which also kind of caters to close to 200 to 300 children. And in a lot of ways, we have been able to kind of get a little bit of dialogue going about what is the identity of a tribal community member, what is the identity of a Paniya or a Betukurumba, through consistent education, consistent engagement, and giving the people an agency to make a change. If that particular identity related aspect is not important for them, it is only inevitable that they will let go of that. And in terms of livelihoods, I mean, like what Mr. Vishnudas was saying, we have to think about some sustainability angle to it. In a lot of ways, many of the tribal livelihoods is just plain agro-based labor or manual labor. In a lot of ways, which is also not very sustainable for the environment. In a lot of ways, we are trying to think about how we can kill two birds with a single arrow. How invasive species as a problem can be addressed through kind of getting it into various other forms of livelihood. Like this, example of lantana elephants in this area. From Lantana camara, one of the most difficult invasive species in this area. This is a evolving model. There can be many other models like this, which can actually provide some kind of a sustainable livelihood and conservation solutions. And providing, the right markets and the right representation for people. When we talk about tribal livelihoods, in a lot of ways, they are not able to tell the kind of story that they have lived. And in a way, create a way in which where you can actually you can tell the exact same story that they experience on their daily basis. The Katanakan honey, when they collect the honey, there is a lot of codependence between the wild animals and the honey gatherer. The same way what Dr. Suma said about consuming the meat from a hunt. The prey was captured by a carnivore, and then the remnants of that prey is actually consumed by the community. The same way, there is a lot of codependence. And when we think about livelihoods, somehow this angle also makes a lot of sense. And to provide an equitable market in that case. So we have been trying to do and experiment a lot with these aspects in terms of nutrition per se, just to kind of bring in Dr. Rajeshwari's points also. Many of the components of the traditional diverse food basket has gone away, because now the single point of diet is the public distribution system. Every family gets close to 20 to 35 kgs of rice, and that is the only meal that they can cook with the kind of lifestyle, with the kind of daily work that they have. So how do we kind of bring various aspects of dietary diversification into action? Now, one key point, as what our friend from the AI organization mentioned, the key delivery points are definitely an important aspect of this. But at the same time, what can we do at the village level? How can we mobilize people to take more and more ownership of making the diet more diverse? And how, as NGOs and government partners, how can we facilitate the entry points of these diverse and nutrition-rich food into the villages? Now, with that, I would like to maybe put a stop on my presentation. If you have any questions, please do ask. Dr. Vellodi, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. Very nice presentation. Thank you. That concludes the formal presentations. So now we move on to the open session. And so this session is now open, and anyone online can ask questions if there are any questions. Are there any, I hope there are some people from the tribal community themselves on this webinar who can hopefully contribute, because I have a few questions related to them.
Excuse me, Dr. Vellodi, from
yes.
our end,
Yes.
we have two of our senior staff with us.
Yes.
We have Malati, who is our senior administrator. I don't know whether you can see. So
Yes,
Malati
yes.
is from the Mulukurumba community, and she has been working in our organization since the last 20, 30 years. She has been one of my biggest teachers when I joined this organization. We also have Janaki with us, who's from the Betukurumba community. She has been a health worker since the last 28 years. And she is a trained nurse, and she's also one of the nurse practitioners in some 32 villages, primarily in the Tepakad, in the nearby Gudlu.
Okay.
So any questions are welcome. Thank you.
Are there questions from anyone online? If not, can I start with a few questions? First, I have a question. It's aimed to more than one person, I think. And that is, sorry, somebody has a question. Sorry, who is that? I can't read from here. I'm sorry.
Hi, but I can wait for you to ask your question.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thanks. That was really fascinating. I just wanted to know from
Sorry,
any participant.
can you identify? Can you say who you are, please?
Yes, my name is Susan Harris. I'm a PhD student at IIT Delhi. I'm research, and my question is pretty general, and I would like any of the panelists to respond to this.
Sure.
Which
What's your question?
that,
Sorry, you're breaking up.
know that the tribals' worldviews are changing. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, we do know that the world of the tribals is changing very fast, but I wanted to know specifically how exactly the Anthropocene is influencing and changing, and how the tribals could respond to that.
I think that's a fascinating question. So the question is, how is the Anthropocene impacting on the worldviews of the tribals? And before I put it to the panelists, I think we should connect the tribal worldview to a concept called ecological spaces. And that is something that's been around for a while. The ecological space of any community or any person is not the same as the ecosystem. It consists of three components: a cultural space, a physical space, and a social space. And everybody has their own ecological space. So the tribal worldview must, by definition, be closely connected to its ecological space. How is the Anthropocene impacting on this? Very interesting. Over to the panel. Perhaps
Can I
Dr.
answer?
Ajit would like to
Yeah.
talk about that, because it is probably relevant to what you've been doing.
Yeah. So I think, in a lot of ways, I think the change is something that tribal communities never expected to seep into their lives. It is something that was forced upon them. And whatever conversations in all these spaces had happened post this change started. So in a lot of ways, what we are trying to do is firefighting. On a daily basis, on a yearly basis, we work with communities and try and understand in a lot of ways in what ways these changes are helping communities to come forward and have their voice. In our space, I can only talk about the kind of work that we do here in Nilgiri, in Gudlur and Pandalur. Here, tribal communities, as compared to, let's say, the central tribal belt, doesn't exist in a cul-de-sac. We don't drive into a forest road and we end up in a tribal village. We go through a thickly populated, urbanized landscape into vast expanses of estates, and on the fringes of these estates, we have smaller, paths I'm not even saying that there are roads. There are points where the roads end, from where you have to either go up the hill or go down a hill and go to a very small pocket of tribal living. And this pocket is completely invisible from the mainstream. So in a lot of ways, when developmental challenges are being addressed, like establishing an Anganwadi system, or starting a small school, or having a hostel for children, when we look at it geographically or spatially, we only look at, okay, how many kilometers from the main road or how many kilometers from a habituated space is this Anganwadi going to be, or this healthcare center going to be. And because of that, macro accessibility related challenges get solved. But what about the micro level challenges? We have a village which has close to 37 children who are going to Anganwadi. There is an Anganwadi center within 1 kilometer of that village, but there is a hill in between. So the children start climbing the hill in the morning. By halfway through, they become tired. They come back to their village. So they don't go. The utilization rate is 0. When we talk to the Anganwadi center, the Anganwadi teacher is not able to convince. Yeah, so these are the kind of issues that we tackle. I don't know whether this answers your question, but in a very practical sense, I think change has always been part of the community. And in terms of the way they express themselves also, lot of cultural aspects and artifacts have disappeared from the way people dress. And
it partly answers the question, I think, but what I think, the question was.
Can I respond to this, Dr. Villodi?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. For me, the tribal worldview is not something which is a purposefully selected one. It is a result of the economic system which is following by the community. That is also a product of a historical and political reason. So why Katanaika community is living inside the forest, and why there is a political reason why they are still living inside the forest without formal land ownership. So it has to be little more deeply and for example, if we are coming to the landscape which I am living, that is in Wayanad, there are 12 different tribal communities are there. And in my presentation itself, I said there is big difference between the ownership of land, access to resources, between Kurichia, Mulukuruma, Paniya, and Katanaika community. So there is historical and political reasons of these communities' economy. So we cannot just think romantically that the worldviews are selected by the community purposefully. It is the product of that history. So while when they are interacting with the mainstream economy, now we are living in a capitalistic world order. The economy is huge, and when the small economies are interacting with the larger economy in terms of money, they cannot just hold on their values, their old values, which does not have a meaning in the new situation of life. And when a Katanaika started selling their collected honey or any other product in a society where money comes in. So when a Katanaika young man or woman or a family collecting honey for their food use, they can keep a half of the honey bunch there and take a half. They will be more sustainable. They will be thinking about sustainability and availability of the same in next year. But when they wanted to compete with the market, when they wanted to compete in the market with their produce for money, and when money is giving meaning to their life and livelihood, their approach will change. So it is very dynamic, that changes is. So I don't think we can, but there is lessons which we can learn from these communities regarding many things, regarding the relationship with animals, food, and collective ownership and other things. But any culture cannot be static. It will be evolving. So
Okay,
we have to understand the historical and political reasons behind it. That's all.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Does that answer your question about?
Yeah, that's been very helpful. Thanks,
Okay,
Dr. Ajit.
thank you.
That's-
So let's move on to the next question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
I have a few questions, but let me start with the first question.
Sorry, can you identify? Can you say who you
Yeah,
are,
my name
please?
is Paul Matthews. I am a native of Wayanad, general public. So my question is this: what happens is that when a tiger reserve is declared, the rights of tribal community for minor food produce gets curtailed significantly. So my question is, has there been any studies done on the negative effects of declaring tiger sanctuary on the tribal community due to the restrictions imposed?
Can anyone from the panel answer that question? Has there been any work done on the impact of cordoning off areas of forest for tiger preservation or conservation and excluding the tribals from those areas?
Yeah, maybe I can answer a bit. Actually, there is a law. The law is saying that, especially the Forest Right Act, which is enacted in the year 2006, very clearly says if we are declaring any tribal, any forest as a tiger reserve or any national park or anything in that status, there should be consensus from the forest dwelling communities who have the rights on the forest. And while declaring the buffer zone and core zone and even the management guidelines, the community can be part of it as the forest right committees are the basic unit of governance there. So the law says like that. But in many places, especially the places nearby Wayanad, especially the Gudalur and those kind, Muthumale, those kind of places, we have seen agitations from the tribal communities saying that the declaration has happened without considering their full rights. So this is all depending upon the political will and understanding of the community about the law and other things. And another thing is that if the forest is declared as tiger reserves, that will also bring in more money for conservation and also more money for management of wildlife. And it will also bring in more opportunity for the tribal communities to for their livelihood options if it is implemented in a right manner. So the problem is always with the political agency of the community to take part into these processes. Our law is very intact in that sense.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know whether we can get much further with this particular issue. I mean, it is a huge issue, I know. But what is clear is that shrinkage of any living area, whether, for example, in this case, the forest, has an adverse effect on the tribal food basket. And I wanted to come back to Dr. Rajeshwari. Have you seen, you described the food baskets, have you seen a change over the last decade or so in the food basket and for the better or the worse, and how is this being tackled?
Sir, to answer your question, actually, we have conducted a research study in the Attapadi area, and we could observe from the tribal community that they have adopted the practices of the urban people, food practices of the urban people also. They moved down to the plains and they have the tendency to acquire the food habits, modernized food habits from the other people. And we could see the antenna and dish connection to all the tribal houses in that area.
Thank you. So so I wanted to ask a question about that. So you've seen that the food basket has changed.
Yeah, changed actually, changed, and they don't, and the cultivation practice among the tribal has also changed, and they are hesitant to cultivate the crops which is local and native to their place. They
Okay,
don't have the
yeah, yes. So the issue is that this change, the creeping in of Western foodstuffs and urbanization, has an adverse impact on tribal health. And there's very good data of this emergence of obesity, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, etc. Now, can we learn in this respect from tribes in other parts of the world? I'm specifically referring to the American Indians. The American Indians have the highest incidence of obesity amongst any community in America. And much of what we see in India is mirrored in amongst this community in America. Their food basket is completely changed. They're relying on Western foods. They start on sugary drinks very early in life. And there's been a very good study amongst the Navajo Indians where people went into the community and started a very intensive program in early childhood by weaning out sugary drinks and monitoring exactly what was being given. And in this way, they compared the two. It was a randomized study. In this way, they showed that the intervention study did far better in terms of the CIAF that I'm talking about and development of obesity. So there may be a place for that sort of intervention in the Western Ghats if it doesn't already exist.
It's definitely we can go with the intervention studies regarding all these aspects. And apart from the dietary habits and the lifestyle pattern they follow, the gene also plays an important role. So we are actually into the a study on nutrigenetics and nutrigenomics, which will definitely have an effect on the lifestyle pattern and the metabolic syndrome and the non-communicable diseases among all the population group. So that has to be studied, and the tribal population, as we think that those people will not be cooperative for conducting such intervention programs. It is not so. They are quite cooperative, and they even express their in-depth ideas and views about their lifestyle pattern and the problems they face. They commonly rise up with the controversy that they are more affected by the middlemen. So between the government or any supportive organization who have concern for their well-off and come out with so many fundings and other sort of intervention programs to the community, the middlemen there play a major role in preventing the actual and exact benefits from the other end to be reached to the tribal community.
Yes, I appreciate that, but presumably the middleman's options are limited if the food basket is shrinking. So one of the reasons for switching to Western diets is that
the media influence.
Is that fresh foodstuffs are becoming more expensive. And so the tribals have increasingly had to resort to easily available and cheaper Western style foods. And so education needs to start at the grassroots level. And I was going to ask Dr. Ajit about that. Getting into the world of the tribals, we're outsiders looking in. To get into the world of tribals, we need to look at mediators. And I was wondering about the role of people like shamans. In a rather derogatory way, they're referred to as witch doctors, which is not at all accurate. But people like that can have huge influence in their communities. Do you work with people like that?
I was just asking Malichechi about her experiences with that. So, in a lot of communities, there are traditional healing practices and practitioners. And in a lot of ways, any organization who are working with tribal communities will be aware of their existence. But in a lot of ways, it is a different kind. It's a tangent basically, and it is the formal health-based organization or rights-based organization's role to slowly bring them in, because everyone will have this existential fear that suppose if some formal entity is working in the same demographic where they are working, sooner or later they will be called out or they will be cast out of the system. So there is a obvious hesitation for faith healers or traditional practitioners to come in. What we have tried and somewhat succeeded is to understand where and when they come into the picture, especially in disease causation and in treatment, where and when they come into the picture and how to integrate that into our practice. So I'll tell you one traditional healing practice that happens in Betukurumba labor during the time of time when a pregnant woman from the Betukurumba community goes into labor, is that there is something called Devam Kanal, which happens where all the women stop going for work, come to the hospital, come to the place where the lady is giving birth, and actually like surround her and collectively call their ancestors to make this whole process smooth. Now, the hospital system somehow identified this as an enabler and built a room right next to the labor room where this practice can happen. In a lot of ways, our mental health program, which right now has close to 415 people registered and been followed up in the community, kind of anchors itself on traditional healing practices. Sooner or later, people are going to go to a so-called shaman who will actually give them some kind of this thing. We also tell these shamans that while you're doing this, please tell them to also swallow this pill or come and like talk to the health worker. So in a lot of ways, the existential fear that they have that they will be cast out of the system will not be there. We are enabling that. But at the same time, we are also saying that, listen, there is a formal system. Can we both work together? Yeah.
Sorry. Trying to get onto their wavelength in whatever way works, basically. Thank you. That's very interesting. So I have another question. I'm sorry, there is another question from.
I've been trying to raise my hand for a while. Ashok, could I say something?
Bala, yes, of course.
Yes, Bala Gopal, I'm a resident in Wayanad. It has been a fascinating session. Thank you so much. And particularly the last comments of Dr. Ajit has been very, very revealing. And I think the observation that I've had as someone who has been about a decade plus in Wayanad is that there is a huge trust deficit between the tribal communities in this district and the government machinery. Dr. Ajit had also, I think, underlined the importance of government being the major player and needing to ensure that the strength of those systems come into action in providing services more efficiently to the tribal communities. But I don't think we listen enough to them. There was a very tragic incident which took place when a pregnant woman whose home was almost across the wall of a community health center was found to be, carrying multiple, babies. She was expecting, I think it was a triplet birth, which was almost going to happen. And this was discovered at such a late time, despite her proximity almost across the wall to the community health center. There was no connect between the woman and this facility. And she was advised that the community health center was not equipped to deal with it, and she was put into an auto rickshaw, taken to the hospital 23 kilometers away, from where she was again put into a vehicle because they said that she needs to go to Calicut to get the help required. And very, very unfortunately, inexcusably, 3 lives were lost on that occasion. This should never have happened if there was that confidence in the health center, which was found absent here. And this is where I think Dr. Ajit's organization and the way that he has described, and I think most movingly about how the facilities for a traditional practice for women to gather around and provide solidarity support by praying was created there. I think that's the most important learning I take away from what we have heard. May I just take a minute actually to also mention the importance of cross learning from different parts, I would say, of initially starting with the Western Ghats and maybe even in the Northeast, of practices and good examples of change which has been possible in the developmental area in interfacing with tribal communities. I think that's sadly lacking. That we should be encouraging this as a possible outcome from this discussion. And also, I think another important issue that was mentioned was about the social audit as an essential component of any development program, where the community themselves audit and assess the nature of service which is being rendered. And these are some of the takeaways, I think, which has come through, and I hope we can capture them in a document that will be useful as we go forward. I must mention also there are some other people who have been getting on the chat link and asking for time to speak. Anu Ramachandran was one person, so you might want to also give these people an opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, many thanks, Bala. I'm sorry that we've not seen all the comments, but sorry, Anu Ramachandran.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Anupama. I am a public health specialist. Right now, I'm a
Hello.
client.
Can I ask you one question?
Sorry, yes.
I think Anu
Can I ask-
had started speaking.
Yes, okay, let's finish with that first. And let's finish with Anu first and then move on to, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Anupama. I'm a public health specialist. I'm right now a Clarendon Scholar at the University of Oxford. I think I had a question for Dr. Rajeshwari. So I was intrigued to see that the list of products being developed also included what was titled as edible ink. So I definitely wanted to know what that was. And I was, I'm going to give her a chance to answer that. But in the meantime, and please correct me if I got this incorrectly. What I understood is that given the changes in their lifestyle, tribal communities are unable to sustain the nutritional habits that held them in good stead, and that has led to nutritional deficiencies, and they are being addressed by developing the products that she shared with us. So now I just wondered whether that was not in some way self-defeating? Because shouldn't another alternative be to get them to address those gaps by cultivating what they used to cultivate, or go with their indigenous diets? Because there is also the whole thrifty gene hypothesis where, if you burden their systems and you give them things that they're not accustomed to, because presumably, and again, I might be wrong about this, but all the substitutes being developed, I'm guessing they have some sort of chemical component or something to keep the preservation intact, which means you're introducing another element into their bodies. So I was a bit, I would really like to know. Maybe I'm not correct on all this.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Rajeshwari, if very briefly, can you answer that, please?
Yes, sir. To the first question, actually, edible ink. Actually, I'm into the field of working on edible packaging solutions, like edible film, edible cutlery, what you can eat along with the food products, what it is packed. So for printing on that edible film, we developed edible ink from various food sources like natural flowers and fruits. So that is what I have mentioned as edible ink.
Perhaps a conversation outside this can carry on.
Okay.
Can we go
So-
back to, I'm sorry, you're only identified by red me notes. There's no other name on. You want to ask your question?
Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Yes, I am Joby from Kannur.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. I would like to just a clarification on how this tribals, how are they, how how are you going to address the issue of this man-animal conflict? Because mostly tribals are the victims and they are the most affected by this man-animal conflicts. So, but there is, I don't see any correct measures to address that issue with tribals, because most of the time it goes unnoticed and nobody takes care of them.
Can I take that question, Dr. Eluri? Yeah.
course.
Thank you for that question. It is a very pertinent issue that we are facing in Udlur and Pangalore, because we have, I think, have been historically marred by a lot of deaths, both from tribal and non-tribal. In fact, even from the migrant population. The most recent victim of a leopard attack was a migrant child from Jharkhand, living in one of the tea plantations. So I think there is no one solution for it. It's a very, very complex issue, because considering all these areas, be that Nilgiri, this part of Nilgiris, or let's say Ooty, Kunnur, or Kotagiri, in a lot of ways, there is a huge influx of people who are coming here, who are settling down, who are in search of milking into the ongoing industry, be that the agroeconomy or the tourist economy. In a lot of ways, the space that was previously available for all these animals to pass from one part of one vegetation to the other has severely restricted. And on top of that, most of the plantations now have an electric fence. So, previously these animals could actually go from one area to the other without the fear of getting electrocuted. And, because of all of this, the animal activity, specifically elephant activity, has been on a rise in this part of the world. And, a lot of efforts also have been put in place, both from the forest department and from the local civic society organizations, to kind of address and, tackle this problem. One is that there is a lot of information channels through WhatsApp and through plain text message, where suppose if there is an elephant sighting or a leopard sighting in one area, the news quickly flashes to everybody in that area, saying that so and so place has an elephant sighting, please don't get out of your house. So in a lot of ways, we have been trying to kind of formalize these systems, and even radio collaring elephants has been a major initiative. In fact, one of our sister organizations have been successful in radio collaring a few elephants who have been troublemakers in this particular area. But the problem remains is that where do these animals go? I mean, it's a difficult issue to come to the root to. Another thing is, having said that animals have to have the liberty to move around in natural habitats, I am also staving off, not moving away from the responsibility of the cost of human life. So any animal who actually consistently attacks a human has to be dealt with, either institutionalized or put down. A lot of issues here also comes from the public outrage, where the government machinery has failed to answer such questions in public. I don't think anybody wants to kind of set booby traps everywhere, but to get people to come to a forum and to address their fears that such and such. And we all know that many of the animals which are causing, especially carnivores, which are attacking people, are either old or wounded, and an institutional facility might be the solution to move forward. So in a lot of ways, I think agencies have to come together and figure out people's priority, and their protection to their life is something that has to be given precedence.
And thank you very much. And that's exactly one of the problems of the Anthropocene, that humans get to make the decisions. Animals have no say in it. So the question is, by closing off the corridors, who is actually at fault? Um, I think there'll be a lot of views about that, but we must move on in the interest of time. We're nearly coming to the end. Are there any other burning questions?
Just can I ask one more thing? Adding to it, just I would like to clarify whether these animal organizations and environmentalists or environmental organizations, they play a part in hindrance to this protection of not only tribals, even people who reside just close to the proximity of forests. Especially, for example, you could see that one elephant, Arikuman from Idiki, this Arikman was staying inside revenue land, and it was relocated. But there were many court cases by these animal lovers and environmentalists against that. So such actions by these organizations do make a hindrance to the government and to the authorities to take a proper action against about this man-animal conflict. What is your opinion about it?
Sorry, anyone want to answer that question? Well, we should probably pause it there. I think we'll have to leave that for the next time. Is there anyone else waiting to say anything or ask anything? No, before we close, I did want to mention one aspect that we haven't discussed at all, and that is preserving tribal culture. Now, of course, we can work with tribals, and many of us are working with tribals to ensure that their ways are preserved, their villages are preserved, there are heritage villages and so on. But there is a threat to all of this, and eventually it is possible that many of these may die out. And that is where I think the role of the museums comes in. We haven't talked about that, but I think there are some excellent anthropology museums in India. There's one in Mysore, and I don't know if there's anyone from that institution on the webinar today, but a museum is not just a collection of artifacts. It is a way of means of communication between the tribals and the public. And it is a very powerful, potentially powerful instrument of education, especially of our children. And there's no time to discuss that, but I just wanted to plant that seed. So I think unless there are any further questions, are there any more questions? Can I ask, Can I ask Prashant, are you on the webinar? Do you want to say anything based on what you've heard so far? Oh, I think
he's already left.
He's already left. Okay. Yeah. Well, in that case, I think we have to close. It's now time to close, and I'd just like to end by saying that I think that was an incredibly amazing learning experience for me, and I'm sure for many of you. Thank you all so much for contributing, and particularly to our panelists and others for contributing. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that come out of this and continuing conversations. But I think we should stop here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Dr.
for the
Ashok.
great opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ashok, for taking this important initiative.
Okay.